The alarm screamed through the underground command center like a dying animal. Commander Jake Sullivan pressed his hands against the metal table and stared at the red numbers flashing on the main screen. 72 hours. That was all the time. Earth had left. "Sir, we just lost Defense Station 7, Captain Roy Martinez said from his position at the communications desk. His voice was steady, but Jake could see the fear in his eyes. "The Zephyrians broke through our outer ring." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this news for weeks now. The alien invasion fleet had been methodically destroying every human outpost, every defense platform, every last hope of survival. Earth's mighty space navy was gone. The colonies were ash. All that remained were 200 million people hiding in tunnels and bunkers, waiting for death to find them. "What about the Luna base?" Jake asked. "Admiral Brooks reports they have maybe 6 hours of air left," Martinez replied. "The Zephyrians hit their life support systems yesterday." Through the thick concrete walls, Jake could hear the distant rumble of explosions. The aliens were already starting their attack on Earth's atmosphere. Their bioweapons were designed to change the air itself, making it poisonous to human lungs. Soon, even the underground cities would become death traps. Jake walked to the observation window that looked out over the main bunker. Thousands of people moved through the corridors below. Families huddled together. Children played games with broken toys. Old men told stories to anyone who would listen. They all knew the end was coming, but they kept living anyway. That was what made humans different from other species in the galaxy. They never gave up hope even when hope was gone. "Commander Sullivan to the lab," a voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Warren says it's urgent." Jake made his way through the maze of tunnels that connected the military command center to the research levels. The Colorado Research Facility had been built deep inside a mountain, designed to survive nuclear war. Now, it was humanity's last refuge, packed with scientists and soldiers who refused to surrender. Dr. Lisa Warren stood in front of a massive machine that filled most of her laboratory. Cables and wires ran everywhere. Strange lights blinked in patterns that hurt to look at. The air around the device seemed to shimmer like heat waves on a summer day. "Jake, I need to show you something," Lisa said. Her hair was messy, and her lab coat was stained with coffee. She had been working for 3 days straight. "I think I found a way to contact them." "Contact who?" Jake asked. Lisa pointed to a wall covered with equations and diagrams. "Other versions of us. Other Earths. Other humanities." Jake stared at her. "Lisa, are you feeling okay? Maybe you should get some sleep." "No, listen to me," Lisa said, grabbing his arm. "The math works. I can prove it exists. There are other realities where different versions of Earth developed. Different versions of humanity." She led him to a computer screen showing wave patterns and energy readings. "Look at this data. My dimensional scanner picked up signals from parallel universes. I found one where humans never learned to feel sorry for their enemies. They conquered their entire galaxy through pure violence and fear." Jake felt cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we called the wrong people for help," Lisa said. "We spent years trying to make peace with other species. We tried to be fair and kind. But what if there's a version of humanity that never cared about being nice? What if they could help us fight?" The laboratory shook as another explosion echoed through the mountain. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jake looked at Lisa's machine and then at the equations on the wall. Everything she was showing him seemed impossible, but then again, so had space travel once upon a time. "Even if this works," Jake said, "what makes you think they would help us?" "Because we're them," Lisa replied. "Same DNA, same species, just different choices." Jake's radio crackled to life. "Commander, we have incoming ships," Martinez's voice reported. "Long-range sensors show the main Zephyrian fleet arriving ahead of schedule. They'll be here in 6 hours, not 72. The timeline had just collapsed. Jake looked at Lisa and saw his own desperation reflected in her eyes. The careful evacuation plans, the last-ditch defense strategies, the hoped-for miracle rescue from other human colonies. None of it mattered now. "How long would it take to send a message?" Jake asked. If I push the power systems to maximum, maybe 20 minutes to establish contact, Lisa said. But Jake, you need to understand something. The readings I'm getting from their dimension, these other humans are dangerous. Really dangerous. They've wiped out entire species just because those species look different. Another explosion shook the facility. This one was closer. Jake could hear people screaming in the corridors outside. Admiral Brooks, this is Commander Sullivan, Jake said into his radio. I need to speak with you immediately. The reply came, through static and interference. Sullivan, we don't have time for meetings. The Zephyrians are deploying their atmosphere processors. Our surface installations are reporting massive chemical changes in the air composition. Admiral Dr. Warren has a plan, Jake said. It's crazy, but it might be our only chance. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Brooks' voice came back, tired and defeated. What kind of plan? Jake looked at Lisa, who was already starting to, power up her dimensional gateway machine. The energy readings were climbing rapidly. Strange harmonics filled the air, making everyone's teeth ache. We're going to call for help, Jake said. From the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. I don't understand, Admiral Brooks replied. Neither do I, Jake admitted. But we don't have any other choice. Lisa was typing commands into her computer with desperate speed. The dimensional gateway was humming now, building up power for the first interdimensional communication attempt in human history. Warning lights flashed red across every surface in the laboratory. Jake, I need authorization, Lisa said. Once I send this message, there's no taking it back. If they decide to come through, we won't be able to stop them. Jake thought about the children playing in the corridors above, the families holding each other in the dark, the old men telling their stories. All of them would be dead within hours unless something changed. Do it, he said. Lisa's fingers flew over the controls. The machine's humming grew louder and louder, until it sounded like 1,000 wasps trapped in a metal box. Energy crackled between the cables. The air in the laboratory began to smell like lightning. Dimensional barrier penetrated, Lisa announced. I'm detecting response signals. Someone's listening. Jake grabbed the microphone connected to Lisa's communication array. His hands were shaking. In all his years as a soldier, he had never been more terrified than he was right now. This is Commander Jake Sullivan of Earth, he said into the microphone. Our species is facing extinction. We are the last survivors of humanity in our reality. If you can hear this message, if you are human like us, we need your help. We are dying. The laboratory fell silent except for the humming of the dimensional gateway. Lisa stared at her instruments, watching for any sign of a response. Jake held the microphone and waited. Then, through the static and interference, a voice came back. It sounded human, but there was something wrong with it. Something cold and empty. This is General Alex Carter of Terra Dominion. We hear you, alternate Earth. State your tactical value and resource potential. Jake looked at Lisa with growing horror. The voice on the radio had asked about their value, not their need for help. These other humans talked like the Zephyrians. Like other people, were just things to be used. But the Zephyrian fleet was only hours away, and Earth had nowhere else to turn. General Alex Carter stood in the war room of the Terra Dominion flagship, staring at the communication device that had just delivered the strangest message in military history. Around him, his officers waited in perfect silence. In Terra Dominion, speaking without permission was punishable by death. Sir, should we destroy the transmission source? Asked Commander Nina Foster. Her cybernetic eye glowed red as it analyzed the dimensional frequencies. Half her face was metal and circuitry, replaced after a battle with rebel aliens who had dared to resist Terra Dominion's expansion. Carter raised his hand for silence. He was thinking. The message from the alternate Earth had been weak and desperate. These other humans spoke of extinction and begged for help like common slaves. It disgusted him, but it also presented an opportunity. Dr. Hayes, Carter said to the pale scientist cowering near the wall. Is this transmission real? Dr. Kevin Hayes stepped forward nervously. He had been studying dimensional physics for 20 years. but he had never expected to detect actual communication from another reality. Yes, sir. The quantum signatures are authentic. There really is another Earth out there, another version of humanity. And they claim to be under attack by aliens called Zephyrians? Carter asked. That appears to be correct, sir. Their technological readings suggest they are approximately 50 years behind our development level. Their weapon systems are primitive, compared to ours. Carter smiled coldly. Terra Dominion had conquered their galaxy through systematic extermination of inferior species. They had turned entire star systems into resource farms. Alien populations served as slave labor or biological weapons depending on their usefulness. But after 50 years of total victory, expansion had slowed. They needed new territories, new resources, new enemies to crush. What do we know about these Zephyrians? Carter asked. Hayes consulted his datapad. Based on the energy readings, from their dimension, the Zephyrians appear to be a standard carbon-based life form with biological weapon capabilities. Nothing we haven't encountered and eliminated before. Commander Foster stepped forward. Sir, I recommend we ignore this transmission. These alternate humans are clearly defective. They speak of mercy and peace. Such weakness would contaminate our forces. Carter considered this. Foster was right about the contamination risk. Terra Dominion had succeeded because they had eliminated all traces of compassion and empathy from their society. Children were raised in military academies where they learned that other species existed only to serve or die. Soldiers who showed mercy were executed as traitors. But the opportunity was too valuable to ignore. A whole new galaxy to conquer, new resources to harvest, new populations to subjugate. And these alternate humans might provide useful research subjects. Terra Dominion scientists had always wondered what humanity would look like if it had developed differently. Open a return channel, Carter ordered. I want to speak with their commander. The communication device hummed to life. Across the dimensional barrier, Carter could hear explosions and screaming. The alternate Earth was clearly dying. Perfect. This is General Carter responding to Commander Sullivan, Carter said into the microphone. Before Terra Dominion commits resources to your situation, we require detailed information about your tactical capabilities and resource inventory. The response came back immediately, desperate and grateful. General Carter, thank you for responding. We have limited military assets remaining, but we can provide technological data and cultural archives. We're transmitting our defensive specifications now. Carter watched as data streams began flowing across the dimensional barrier. These alternate humans were sharing their most sensitive military secrets with complete strangers. The level of trust was beyond Carter's comprehension. In Terra Dominion, such behavior would result in immediate execution for treason. Dr. Hayes analyzed their transmissions, Carter ordered. I want to know their strengths and weaknesses. Hayes worked frantically. At his console, Sir, their technology is indeed primitive, but some of their defensive systems show interesting innovations. Their energy shielding appears more efficient than ours, and their medical technology is surprisingly advanced. Medical technology? Foster asked. Why would they waste resources healing inferior specimens? Carter was wondering the same thing. Terra Dominion had long ago abandoned medical treatment for non-essential personnel. Resources were better spent on weapons and conquest. But these alternate humans seemed to value individual lives in a way that made no tactical sense. The communication device crackled again. General Carter, we're also transmitting cultural data that might interest your scientists, historical archives, literature, art, music. We want you to understand who we are. Carter frowned. Who they were. Identity was defined by conquest and power, not by ancient stories and noise patterns. But he signaled Hayes to continue receiving the transmissions. Intelligence gathering was always valuable. Meanwhile, in the alternate Earth's reality, Captain Roy Martinez was leading humanity's last space battle. His ship, the UES Defiance, was vastly outgunned by the Zephyrian advance fleet. But Martinez had volunteered for this suicide mission to buy time for the dimensional communication. All fighters, this is Captain Martinez, he broadcast to the dozen remaining human pilots. We're not going home from this one, but we're going to make these aliens remember us. The Defiance charged straight into the center of the Zephyrian formation. Its weapons were small compared to the alien ships, but Martinez had loaded the ship with every explosive device they could find. If he was going to die, he would take as many enemies with him as possible. The battle was broadcast live to the underground cities on Earth. Families gathered around screens to watch their last defenders make their final stand. Children cheered when Martinez's ship destroyed a Zephyrian cruiser. Adults wept when they saw the Defiance disappear in a ball of fire, taking Captain Martinez and his crew with it. Back on Terra Dominion's flagship, Carter was reviewing the cultural transmissions from alternate Earth. What he saw disturbed him more than any military threat. These humans created art that celebrated peace and cooperation. Their literature praised self-sacrifice and compassion. Their music spoke of love and hope. "This is worse than I thought," Carter said to Foster. "These alternate humans are not just weak. They are infected with defective programming that makes them value other species above their own survival." Foster nodded. "Should we terminate contact?" Carter studied the tactical data one more time. The alternate Earth's energy shielding technology alone would be worth the expedition, and the opportunity to study these mentally defective humans could provide valuable insights into Terra Dominion's own evolutionary success. "No," Carter decided. "We will intervene, but not to save them. We will use this opportunity to expand our empire into a new reality. Once we eliminate their Zephyrian problem, we will integrate their population into our slave forces and claim their resources. And if they resist?" Carter's smile was colder than deep space. "Then we will do to them what we did to the Vegan Republic and the Centauri Alliance. We will make them extinct." Dr. Hayes looked up from his console nervously. "Sir, there's something else. The dimensional gateway is creating instabilities in both realities. If we maintain contact for too long, it could cause critical damage to space-time itself." "How long do we have?" Carter asked. Carter: "Difficult to calculate precisely, but I estimate we have perhaps a year before the instabilities become dangerous." "More than enough time to conquer a galaxy," Carter said. "Begin preparations for dimensional invasion. Ready the bioweapon ships and the conversion fleets. We're going to show these alternate humans what real power looks like." Foster began issuing orders to the Terra Dominion war machine. Within hours, a fleet of organic ships began moving toward the dimensional gateway coordinates. These vessels were grown from the bodies of conquered alien species, twisted into weapons of war. Each ship carried enough biological weapons to sterilize entire worlds. On alternate Earth, Commander Sullivan was still trying to establish better communication with Terra Dominion. He had no idea that he had just invited the galaxy's most dangerous predators to come and help his dying world. "General Carter, the Zephyrian main fleet will arrive in 4 hours," Sullivan transmitted. "Can you send assistance?" Carter's reply was calm and confident. "We are already en route, Commander Sullivan. Terra Dominion never abandons fellow humans. You can count on us to solve your alien problem permanently." Sullivan felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, help was coming. He had no way of knowing that Terra Dominion's definition of solving problems involved complete extermination of everyone involved. The dimensional gateway tore open like a wound in space itself. Commander Jake Sullivan watched from the underground command center as massive ships began emerging from the swirling portal above Earth's atmosphere. These were not the clean metal vessels he had expected. The Terra Dominion fleet looked like it had been grown rather than built. Each ship was a twisted mass of organic material and machinery fused together. Hull plating that looked like insect shells covered weapons that pulsed with their own heartbeat. The largest vessel was the size of a city, its surface covered in what appeared to be thousands of eyes that tracked movement across space. "My God," whispered Admiral Brooks over the radio from Luna Base. "What have we done?" Jake felt the same horror, but he pushed it down. The Zephyrian fleet was already in the outer solar system, and Earth's atmosphere was becoming more poisonous by the hour. Whatever these Terra Dominion ships looked like, they were humanity's only hope. The first shuttle landed in the ruins of New Denver, just outside the underground facility. Jake took a deep breath and walked to the surface with a small escort team. He had not breathed real air in months, and the poisoned atmosphere burned his lungs through his protective mask. The Terra Dominion shuttle was the same organic design as their larger ships. Its door opened with a wet sound, like tearing flesh. 3 figures stepped out, and Jake's blood turned cold. They looked exactly like humans. Same faces, same bodies, same general appearance. But something was fundamentally wrong with their eyes. They moved with perfect military precision, but there was no warmth in their expressions, no curiosity about the devastated world around them. They looked at the burning ruins of Earth's cities the same way someone might look at a broken tool. The leader was tall and wore a uniform covered in symbols that Jake did not recognize. When he spoke, his voice was calm and controlled, but completely empty of emotion. "I am General Alex Carter of Terra Dominion. You are Commander Sullivan." It was not a question. Jake nodded and extended his hand for a handshake. Carter looked at the gesture with confusion, then ignored it completely. "We have eliminated the alien threat in your outer system," Carter continued. "Your species will now be integrated into our empire for protective custody." "Integrated?" Jake asked. "What does that mean?" The second Terra Dominion officer stepped forward. Half her face was replaced with metal and glowing circuits. "I am Commander Nina Foster. Integration means your population will be relocated to designated areas where they can be properly supervised and utilized." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the poisoned air. Utilized for what? Labor, research, breeding programs. Standard procedures for newly acquired populations, Foster replied as if she were discussing the weather. Jake's escort team shifted nervously behind him. These were not the saviors they had hoped for. These were conquerors who happened to share human DNA. "Perhaps you could show us the battle," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We would like to see how you defeated the Zephyrians." Carter nodded to Foster, who activated a holographic display device. The image showed space above Earth where the Zephyrian and Terra Dominion fleets had met in battle. Jake watched in growing horror as the Terra Dominion ships unleashed weapons he had never imagined. One Zephyrian cruiser was hit by some kind of biological weapon that turned the crew into living bombs. The infected aliens tore their own ship apart from the inside while screaming in agony. Another Terra Dominion vessel released clouds of tiny organisms that consumed enemy ships like acid, but slowly enough that the crews had time to suffer. The Zephyrians who tried to abandon ship were captured by mechanical tentacles and dragged into the Terra Dominion hulls for purposes Jake did not want to imagine. "Efficient," Carter commented as they watched Zephyrian survivors being processed through what looked like meat grinders. These aliens were poorly adapted for warfare. Their mistake was assuming they could negotiate or retreat. Jake turned away from the display. He had seen enough death during the war, but this was something different. This was cruelty for its own sake. The Terra Dominion forces had not just defeated their enemies. They had tortured them. "The remaining Zephyrian fleet is withdrawing from your system," Foster reported. "They appear to be broadcasting warnings about Terra Dominion throughout their empire. This will simplify future conquest operations." "Future operations?" Jake asked. "Your reality contains numerous star systems with exploitable resources," Carter explained. "Once Earth is properly integrated, we will expand our operations to claim these assets." Jake realized with growing panic that Earth had not been saved. It had been conquered by a version of humanity that was worse than the aliens they had been fighting. At least the Zephyrians had shown some mercy to human civilians. These Terra Dominion forces spoke of people like they were livestock. Meanwhile, back in the underground facility, Dr. Lisa Warren was watching her dimensional gateway with increasing alarm. The readings were all wrong. The portal was supposed to be temporary, but the Terra Dominion ships were somehow keeping it open and stable. Energy patterns showed they were building permanent anchor points on both sides of the dimensional barrier. "They're not planning to leave," she whispered to herself. Lisa began working frantically to modify the gateway controls. If she could destabilize the portal, she might be able to send the Terra Dominion forces back to their own reality. But every time she tried to access the main controls, she found that they had been locked out by Terra Dominion technicians. A shadow fell across her work station. Lisa looked up to see a Terra Dominion scientist standing behind her. Like the others, he looked human but felt alien. His smile was too wide and his eyes were too bright. "Dr. Warren, I am Dr. Kevin Hayes. I have been looking forward to meeting you," he said in a friendly tone that somehow made Lisa's skin crawl. "Your dimensional research is quite impressive for such a primitive civilization." "Primitive?" Lisa asked. "Your people waste enormous resources on non-essential activities," Hayes explained, pulling up a chair. "Art, music, literature, recreational activities. In Terra Dominion, we eliminated these inefficiencies long ago. All resources are devoted to expansion and conquest." Hayes began examining Lisa's equipment with obvious interest. This gateway design could be improved significantly. With proper modifications, we could open portals to dozens of alternate realities simultaneously. "Why would you want to do that?" Lisa asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "More realities mean more resources. More populations to harvest. More enemies to eliminate," Hayes said casually. "Your reality is just the beginning." Lisa tried to work on her sabotage programs while Hayes was distracted, but she quickly realized he was watching her every move. His friendly demeanor was just an act. He knew exactly what she was trying to do. On the surface, Jake was still meeting with Carter and Foster when reports began coming in from around the world. Terra Dominion forces were landing at every major population center. They were not attacking the underground cities, but they were setting up control stations and barrier fields. "You're trapping us," Jake said. "We are protecting you," Carter corrected. "Your species has proven incapable of defending itself. Left alone, you would simply face extinction from the next alien invasion. Under Terra Dominion guidance, humanity will survive and prosper." "What kind of survival?" Jake demanded. "You want to turn us into slaves?" Foster's cybernetic eye focused on Jake with mechanical precision. "You will be given useful roles appropriate to your capabilities. Genetic modification programs will eventually correct the defects that made your species so vulnerable." "Defects?" "Compassion, empathy, reluctance to eliminate inferior species," Carter listed. "These traits nearly caused your extinction. We will remove them." Jake felt sick. The Terra Dominion forces planned to destroy everything that made humanity human. They would keep the bodies but eliminate the souls. Admiral Brooks' voice crackled over Jake's radio. "Sullivan, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy readings from the dimensional portal. It looks like more Terra Dominion ships are coming through." Jake looked at Carter, who smiled coldly. "The first wave was just our advanced scouts. The main Terra Dominion fleet will arrive within hours. Once they establish full control, the real work of integrating your reality can begin." Integration was clearly Terra Dominion's word for conquest and enslavement. Jake realized that in trying to save humanity, they had doomed it to something worse than extinction. They had called for help from the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and that species had turned out to be themselves. 6 months had passed since Terra Dominion arrived on Earth, and the world had become unrecognizable. Commander Jake Sullivan crouched in the ruins of what used to be Central Park in New York City, watching Terra Dominion guards patrol the area. Below, the once green park was now a processing center where human civilians were sorted into work groups and transported to labor camps. The underground cities had been sealed and converted into production facilities. Families were separated based on their usefulness to Terra Dominion operations. Children over 12 were sent to military training centers where they were taught to suppress all emotional responses. Adults worked in factories building weapons and ships for Terra Dominion's expansion into other realities. Jake's resistance movement operated from the bombed-out subway tunnels beneath the city. They had fewer than 300 fighters left, and most of their weapons had been captured or destroyed. But they kept fighting because the alternative was watching humanity lose its soul completely. "Commander, we have movement in Sector 7, whispered Maria Santos, one of his scouts. She was barely 18 years old, but the war had aged her face beyond her years. "Terra Dominion is bringing in another group of prisoners." Jake crawled to the edge of the rubble pile and looked through his binoculars. A column of Zephyrian captives was being marched toward the processing center. The aliens looked broken and defeated. Many were injured and could barely walk. Jake was surprised to feel sympathy for the creatures that had tried to destroy his world. "Those are the aliens we were fighting before Terra Dominion arrived," Maria said. "Why are they keeping them alive?" Jake lowered his binoculars with a sick feeling in his stomach. "Because they're using them for experiments." Over the past 6 months, Jake had learned terrible things about Terra Dominion's methods. They did not simply kill their enemies. They studied them, tortured them, and used them as test subjects for new biological weapons. The screams that came from the research facilities at night were proof enough of what happened to prisoners. But something unexpected had been happening lately. Some of the Terra Dominion soldiers were starting to act differently. Commander Nina Foster, the cybernetic officer who had arrived with the first wave, had been seen talking to human children instead of simply processing them for transport. Other Terra Dominion personnel had been asking strange questions about human customs and emotions. Jake's radio crackled quietly. "Sullivan, this is Base 2. We have a situation." Base 2 was their medical facility, hidden in an abandoned hospital basement. Jake made his way through the tunnel system, moving carefully to avoid Terra Dominion patrols. The tunnels were dark and filled with the smell of smoke and decay. Dr. Warren was waiting for him when he arrived. She looked exhausted and frightened. Her dimensional gateway equipment had been moved to this location after Terra Dominion took over the main facility, but she could only work on it in secret. "Jake, I've been monitoring the dimensional portal," she said. "Something is wrong with the stability fields. The repeated crossings are creating fractures in reality itself." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means both realities could collapse if this continues," Lisa explained. "The dimensional barrier was never meant to be opened permanently. Every ship that crosses over makes the damage worse." Jake studied the readings on her equipment. He did not understand the science, but he could see that the energy patterns were becoming chaotic. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 6 months, maybe less." Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "Jake, if these realities collapse, it won't just kill everyone on Earth. It will erase both universes completely. Billions of people across multiple galaxies will simply stop existing." Before Jake could respond, they heard footsteps in the corridor, outside. Jake grabbed his rifle and motioned for everyone to take cover. The steps were too heavy and too regular to be human. Terra Dominion soldiers moved with mechanical precision that was easy to recognize, but instead of breaking down the door, someone knocked gently. A voice called out softly, "Commander Sullivan, my name is Commander Foster. I need to speak with you." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. Foster was one of the most dangerous Terra Dominion officers. Why would she come here alone and ask to talk? "How do we know this is not a trap?" Jake called back. "Because if it were a trap, this building would already be surrounded by assault troops," Foster replied. "I am here alone and I am unarmed." Jake kept his rifle ready as he opened the door. Foster stood in the hallway without her usual military escort. Her cybernetic implants were still glowing, but something about her posture seemed different. Less rigid, more human. "What do you want?" Jake asked. Foster stepped into the room and looked around at the hidden medical equipment. "I want to understand something. Yesterday I witnessed a group of human children sharing their food rations with injured Zephyrian prisoners. This behavior makes no tactical sense." "So," Jake said. "So I cannot stop thinking about it," Foster continued. "In Terra Dominion, such behavior would be considered defective programming, but these children seemed happy, content. How is this possible when they had less food for themselves?" Jake stared at her. This was the woman who had spoken of humans as livestock to be processed. Now she was asking about kindness like it was a foreign concept. "They were being kind," Jake said simply. "It's what humans do." "But why?" Foster asked. "What advantage does it provide? What resource does it generate?" Lisa stepped forward carefully. "It doesn't generate resources. It generates hope. Connection. the feeling that life is worth living. Foster's cybernetic eye flickered as she processed this information. I have been analyzing human behavior for months. Your species consistently chooses actions that reduce efficiency and survival probability, yet you continue to exist. Maybe survival isn't everything, Jake said. Foster was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice sounded different, less mechanical. General Carter has ordered the final phase of integration to begin tomorrow. All remaining human civilians will be processed for genetic modification. The procedures will remove emotional responses and empathy centers from the brain. Jake felt his blood turn cold. You're going to lobotomize everyone. That was the plan, Foster said quietly. But I find myself questioning the necessity of this action. Before Jake could respond, his radio crackled with an urgent transmission. All resistance units, this is Captain Martinez. Repeat, this is Captain Martinez calling all units. Jake grabbed the radio in shock. Roy, you're alive? Barely, but yes. Martinez's voice came back through heavy static. I'm in the outer system with a small fleet. Jake, you need to know something. I'm not alone out here. What do you mean? I mean, we have Zephyrian ships flying alongside us, Martinez explained. After Terra Dominion showed up, the surviving aliens realized that you people were the lesser threat. We've formed an alliance. Jake looked at Foster, who was listening to the transmission with obvious interest. Her cybernetic implants were analyzing the communication frequencies and troop movements. Roy, where have you been for 6 months? Jake asked. Fighting a running battle through the asteroid belt. Terra Dominion sent hunter ships after us, but we've been picking up other survivors along the way. Humans, Zephyrians, even some of the other alien species that Terra Dominion conquered in their reality. Foster stepped closer to the radio. Captain Martinez, this is Commander Foster of Terra Dominion. You are in violation of integration protocols. Foster? Martinez's voice was full of anger. You're the one who ordered the execution of civilian evacuation ships. Those executions were necessary to maintain order, Foster replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Tell that to the children who watched their parents die, Martinez shot back. Foster, I've seen what your people do to prisoners. I've seen your experimentation facilities. You're not soldiers, you're monsters. Foster's cybernetic eye dimmed slightly. We are efficient, we achieve victory. At what cost? Martinez asked. You've turned yourselves into machines. You've forgotten what it means to be human. Jake watched Foster's face as she struggled with concepts that seemed foreign to her. For the first time since Terra Dominion arrived, one of their officers was experiencing doubt. Foster, Jake said quietly. What did you feel when you saw those children sharing their food? Foster turned to look at him. Her cybernetic implants flickered uncertainly. I felt something, a sensation I could not identify. It was not efficient, but it was not unpleasant. That was happiness, Lisa explained. You felt happy watching an act of kindness. Foster's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, where a human heart still beat beneath the cybernetic modifications. Is this what Terra Dominion removed from our population? This happiness? Among other things, Jake said. Compassion, love, hope, the ability to care about others more than yourself. Martinez's voice came over the radio again. Foster, I'm offering you a choice. Help us stop Carter's final integration plan, or we'll do it without you. But either way, we're not going to let Terra Dominion destroy what's left of real humanity. Foster looked around the room at Jake, Lisa, and the hidden medical equipment. For the first time in her adult life, she was facing a decision based on something other than military efficiency. The dimensional gateway crackled with unstable energy as reality itself began to tear apart. Commander Jake Sullivan watched from the control room as space-time fractures spread across the portal like cracks in broken glass. Dr. Lisa Warren worked frantically at her instruments, trying to prevent the collapse of both universes. Jake, the dimensional barrier is failing, Lisa shouted over the noise of alarms and explosions. If we don't stabilize it in the next hour, both realities will be destroyed. Outside, the final battle for Earth was raging. Captain Roy Martinez had arrived with his mixed fleet of human and Zephyrian ships, just as General Carter began his genetic modification procedures. Now 3 different forces fought in the skies above Earth, while the fabric of existence unraveled around them. Commander Nina Foster stood at the edge of the control room, watching Terra Dominion soldiers fight against their former allies. Her cybernetic implants flickered with conflicting signals as she struggled with emotions she had never been taught to understand. "Foster, we need your help," Jake said, reloading his rifle as Terra Dominion assault troops advanced through the facility. "Corridors. Your people will listen to you. They will execute me as a traitor," Foster replied, but her voice lacked the cold certainty it had carried for months. "I have violated too many protocols." Through the facility's communication system, General Carter's voice echoed with mechanical authority. "All Terra Dominion personnel, Commander Foster has been compromised by defective programming. She is to be terminated on site along with all resistance forces." Foster's cybernetic eye glowed brighter as she accessed Terra Dominion military networks. "Carter is preparing to detonate a reality bomb. He would rather destroy both universes than allow Terra Dominion forces to be infected with human emotions." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Can he actually do that?" "Yes," Lisa said from her control station. "A reality bomb would cause an immediate cascade failure. Both dimensions would collapse within minutes." The facility shook as explosions rocked the upper levels. Martinez's voice came through on the radio, barely audible over static and weapons fire. "Jake, we're holding them off outside, but Carter's flagship is moving toward the dimensional portal. Whatever you're going to do, do it fast." Foster moved to one of the communication panels and began entering commands. "I can access Terra Dominion command frequencies. Perhaps I can convince some of our forces to stand down." "Why would they listen to you now?" Jake asked. Foster paused, her human hand touching the metal side of her face. "Because I am going to tell them something that Terra Dominion has spent 50 years trying to make us forget. I am going to remind them what we used to be." She activated the general broadcast system. Her voice went out to every Terra Dominion ship and soldier in both realities. "This is Commander Foster speaking to all Terra Dominion forces. I have discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about human evolution." Jake listened as Foster began explaining what she had learned during her months on Earth. She described watching children share food with enemies. She talked about humans who sacrificed themselves to save others. She spoke of art and music and literature that served no tactical purpose, but somehow made life worth living. "General Carter claims these traits are defects that made our alternate selves weak," Foster continued. "But I have seen the evidence. These humans survived an impossible war through unity and hope. They created technologies we never developed because they valued healing over hurting. They formed alliances with former enemies because they chose trust over fear. On Terra Dominion ships throughout the solar system, soldiers stopped fighting and listened to their commanders' words. Many of them had been experiencing strange feelings since arriving in this reality. Confusion when they saw families embracing, hesitation when ordered to separate children from parents, unexpected sadness when they witnessed acts of kindness." Dr. Kevin Hayes, the Terra Dominion scientist, was monitoring the broadcast from Carter's flagship. He had been analyzing human behavior for months, and Foster's words confirmed his own secret research. The alternate humans were not defective. They were evolved. "Sir," Hayes said to Carter, "Commander Foster may be correct. My analysis suggests that emotional capacity actually enhances survival rates under certain conditions." Carter's face twisted with rage. "You have also been compromised, Doctor. Guards, arrest this traitor." But the guards hesitated. They had been listening to Foster's broadcast, and her words were awakening memories that Terra Dominion had tried to suppress. Memories of what their ancestors had been like before the great purging of emotions. Meanwhile, in the facility control room, Lisa was fighting a losing battle against dimensional collapse. "Jake, I can't hold it together much longer. The reality fractures are spreading too fast." Foster turned from the communication panel. "There is another way. If I can reach the dimensional gateway controls on Carter's ship, I might be able to create a feedback loop that sends Terra Dominion forces back to our reality before the collapse. That's suicide, Jake said. Carter's ship is surrounded by hostile forces. Perhaps, Foster agreed. But it would also be the right thing to do. She paused, seeming surprised by her own words. I understand now why your people chose compassion over conquest. It feels better to save lives than to take them. Foster gathered a squad of Terra Dominion soldiers who had been moved by her broadcast. To Jake's amazement, nearly a dozen of Carter's own troops volunteered to help stop their general's plan. We remember stories our grandparents told, one soldier explained. Stories about what Terra Dominion was like before we eliminated weakness. Maybe it is time to remember those lessons. The assault on Carter's flagship was unlike any battle in Terra Dominion history. Instead of coldly efficient tactics, the attacking forces fought with passion and determination. They protected each other. They took risks to save wounded comrades. They fought for something greater than military victory. Carter watched his own forces turn against him with genuine bewilderment. This is impossible. Emotions make soldiers weak and ineffective. But the evidence proved otherwise. Foster's mixed force of humans, reformed Terra Dominion troops, and even some Zephyrian allies fought with a coordination that Carter's purely logical forces could not match. They anticipated each other's needs. They covered each other's weaknesses. They fought as one unit instead of individual machines. Foster reached the dimensional controls just as Carter activated his reality bomb. The weapon was a twisted fusion of Terra Dominion technology and conquered alien science, designed to unravel the basic forces that held universes together. You cannot stop this, Carter said, aiming his weapon at Foster. I will not allow Terra Dominion to be infected with your defective programming. Foster looked at the reality bomb controls and then at Carter. For the first time in her adult life, she smiled. It was an expression Terra Dominion had bred out of their population generations ago. You are wrong about one thing, General, she said. These are not defects. They are improvements. Foster activated the feedback loop while simultaneously redirecting the reality bomb's energy back through the dimensional portal. The explosion sent most of the Terra Dominion fleet tumbling back into their own reality while stabilizing the dimensional barrier. Carter fired his weapon, but Foster had already initiated the sequence. As the portal closed behind the retreating Terra Dominion forces, Carter's ship was caught between dimensions and simply vanished. Back on Earth, Jake and Lisa watched the dimensional gateway finally stabilize and then shut down permanently. The portal sealed itself, cutting off contact between the two realities forever. Is it over? Jake asked. Lisa nodded, exhausted but relieved. The barrier is stable again. Both universes are safe. Outside, the fighting had stopped. Terra Dominion, forces that remained in Earth's reality, were laying down their weapons and asking for asylum. They wanted to learn how to feel emotions again. They wanted to remember what their ancestors had been like before conquest became more important than compassion. Captain Martinez landed his ship in the ruins of New York and walked out to meet Jake and the others. Behind him came a mixed group of humans and Zephyrians, former enemies now working together to rebuild what had been destroyed. Foster, badly injured but alive, was helped from the medical bay where Lisa had been treating her wounds. What happens now? She asked. Jake looked around at the diverse group of survivors, humans from Earth and Terra Dominion, Zephyrians who had learned to trust their former enemies, all of them working together to clean up the rubble and start rebuilding. Now, we prove that being human isn't about our DNA, Jake said. It's about our choices, and we choose to be better than what we were. In the months that followed, Earth slowly healed. The poisoned atmosphere cleared with help from Zephyrian atmospheric technology. Cities were rebuilt with designs that welcomed all species. Children who had been separated from their families were reunited. Foster became an ambassador between the different groups, teaching Terra Dominion refugees how to experience emotions safely while learning about hope and love from human children. The final scene took place 1 year later in Central Park, now restored to its former beauty.